Chapter 7. William's Evening Out. William's family had come up to London for a holiday. They had brought William with them, chiefly because it was not safe to leave William behind. William was not the sort of boy who could be trusted to live a quiet and blameless life at home in the absence of his parents. He had many noble qualities, but he had not that one. So William gloomily and reluctantly accompanied his family to London. William's elder sister and mother lived in a whirl of shopping and theatres. William's elder brother went every day to see a county cricket match, and returned in a state of frenzied excitement to discuss the play and players all the evening without the slightest encouragement from anyone. William's father foregathered with old cronies at his club, or slept in the hotel smoking-room. It was open to William to accompany any of the members of his family. He might shop and attend matinees with his mother and Ethel. He might go, on sufferance, to watch cricket matches with Robert, or he might sleep in the smoking-room with his father. He was encouraged by each of them to join some other member of the family, and he occasionally managed to evade them all and spend the afternoon sliding down the banisters, till firmly but politely checked by the manager of the hotel, watching for any temporary absence of the liftman, during which he might try to manipulate the machine itself, or contending with the most impudent-looking page-boy in a silent and furtive rivalry in grimaces. But in spite of this, he was supremely bored. He regarded the centre of the British Empire with contempt. "Streets," he said with devastating scorn at the end of his first day here. "Shops! Ugh!" William's soul pined for the fields and lanes and woods of his home, for his band of boon companions, with whom he was wont to wrestle and fight and trespass and plot daredevil schemes, and set the world at defiance, for the irate farmers who helped to supply that spice of danger and excitement without which life to William and his friends was unendurable. He took his London pleasures sadly. "Oh, history!" he remarked coldly when they escorted him round Westminster Abbey. His only comment on being shown the Tower was that it seemed to be taking up the whole day, not that there was much else to do, anyway. His soul yearned for the society of his own kind. The son of his mother's cousin, who lived near, had come to see him one day. He was a tall, pale boy, who asked William if he could fox-trot, and if he didn't adore Axel Haig's etchings, and if he didn't prefer Paris to London. The conversation was an unsatisfactory one, and acquaintance did not ripen. But accompanying his family on various short cuts in the back streets of London, he had glimpsed another world, a world of street urchins who fought and wrestled and gave vent to piercing whistles, and hung on to the backs of carts, and paddled in the gutter, and rang front door-bells and fled from policemen. He watched it wistfully. Socially, his tastes were not high. All he demanded from life was danger and excitement and movement and the society of his own kind. He liked boys, crowds of boys, boys who shouted and whistled and ran and courted danger, boys who had never heard of any silly old etchings. As he followed his family with his air of patient martyrdom on all their expeditions, it was the glimpse of this underworld alone that would lift the shadow from his furrowed brow and bring a light to his stern, freckled countenance. There were times when he stopped and tried to get into contact with it, but it was not successful. His mother's "Come along, William, don't speak to those horrid little boys," always recalled him to the blameless and appalling respectability of his own family. Yet even before that hateful cry interrupted him, he knew that it was useless. He was an alien being, a clean little boy in a neat suit with a fashionable mother and sister. He was beyond the pale, an outsider, a pariah, a creature to be mocked and jeered at. The position galled William. He was by instinct on the side of the lawless, the anti-respectable. His spirits rose as the time for his return to the country approached. Yet there was a wistful longing in his heart for the boy world of London still unexplored, as well as a fierce contempt for the London his parents had revealed to him. William had been invited to a party on his last evening in London. William's mother's cousin lived in Kensington, and had invited William to a little gathering of her children's friends. William did not wish to go to the party. What is more, William did not intend to go to the party. But a wonderful plan had come into William's head. "It's very kind of her," he said meekly. "Yes, I'll be very pleased to go." That was unlike William's usual manner of receiving an invitation to a party. Generally, there were expostulations, indignation, assertion of complete incapacity to go to anything that particular night. William's mother looked at him. You feel all right, don't you, dear?" she said anxiously. "Oh, yes," said William, "and I feel I'll just like a party." "You can wear your Eton suit," said Mrs. Brown. "Oh, yes," said William, "I'd like that." William's face was quite expressionless as he spoke. Mrs. Brown pinched herself to make sure that she was awake. "I expect they'll have music and dancing and that sort of thing," she said. She thought perhaps that William had misunderstood the kind of party it would be. William's expressionless face did not change. "Oh, yes," he said pleasantly, "music and dancing will be fine." When Mr. Brown was told of the invitation, he groaned. "And I suppose it will take the whole day to make him go," he said. "No," said Mrs. Brown eagerly. "That's the strange part. He seems to want to go. He really does. And he seems to want to wear his Eton suit, and you know what a bother that used to be. I suppose he's beginning to take a pride in his appearance. I think London must be civilizing him." "Well," said Mr. Brown dryly, "I suppose you know best. I suppose miracles do happen." When the evening of the party arrived, there was some difficulty as to the transit of William to his place of entertainment. The house was so near to the hotel where the Browns were staying that a taxi seemed hardly worth while, but there was a general reluctance to be his escort. Ethel was going to a theatre, and Robert had been out all day and thought he deserved a bit of rest in the evening, instead of carting kids about. Mrs. Brown's rheumatism had come on again, and Mr. Brown wanted to read the evening paper. William, sleek and smooth and brushed and encased in his Eton suit, his freckled face shining with cleanliness and virtue, broke meekly into the discussion. "I know the way, mother. Can't I just go myself?" Mrs. Brown wavered. "I don't see why not," she said at last. "If you think that boy can walk 3 yards by himself without getting into mischief—" began Mr. Brown. William turned innocent, reproachful eyes upon him. "Oh, but look at him," said Mrs. Brown. "And it isn't as if he didn't want to go to the party. You want to go, don't you, dear?" "Yes, mother," said William meekly. His father threw him a keen glance. "Well, of course," he said, returning to his paper, "do as you like. I'm certainly not going with him myself, but don't blame me if he blows up the Houses of Parliament, or dams the Thames, or pulls down Nelson's monument." William's sorrowful, wistful glance was turned again upon his father. "I won't do any of those things, I promise, father," he said solemnly. "I don't see why he shouldn't go alone," said Mrs. Brown. "It's not far, and he's sure to be good, because he's looking forward to it so. Aren't you, William?" "Yes, mother," said William, with his most inscrutable expression. So he went alone. William set off briskly down the street. A neat figure in an Eton suit, an overcoat, a well-fitting cap, and patent leather shoes. His expression had relaxed as soon as the scrutiny of his family was withdrawn. It became expectant and determined. Once out of the sight of possible watchers from the hotel, he turned off the road that led to his mother's cousin's house, and walked purposely down a side street, and thence to another side street. There they were. He knew they would be there. Boys after William's own heart. Dirty boys, shouting boys, whistling boys, fighting boys. William approached. At his own home he would have been acclaimed at once as leader of any lawless horde, but here he was not known. His present appearance, moreover, brushed hair, evening clothes, clean face, was against him. To them he was a thing taboo. They turned on him with delightful yells of scorn. "Yah!" Where's your mammy? Look at his shoes. Boo! Isn't his hair brushed nice? Yeah. Boo! Garn!" The tallest of them snatched William's cap from his head and ran off with it. The snatching of a boy's cap from his head is a deadly insult. William, whose one wistful desire was to be friends with his new acquaintances, yet had his dignity to maintain. He flew after the boy and caught him by the back of his neck, and then they closed. The rest of the tribe stood round them in a ring, giving advice and encouragement. Their contempt for William vanished, for William was a good fighter. He lost his collar and acquired a black eye, and his hair, in the exhilaration of the contest, recovered from its recent severe brushing and returned to its favorite vertical angle. The two were fairly well matched, and the fight was a most satisfactory one, till the cry of "Cops!" brought it to an abrupt end, and the crowd of boys, with William now in the middle, fled precipitately down another street. When they were at a safe distance from the blue helmet, they stopped, and the large boy handed William his cap. "Here you are," he said, with a certain respect. William, with a careless gesture, tossed the cap into the air. "Don't want it," he said. "What's your name?" "William." "He's called Bill," said the boy to the others. William read in their faces a growing interest, not quite friendship yet, but still not quite contempt. He glowed with pride. He put his hands into the pockets of his overcoat, and there met a sixpence. Joy! "What's your name?" he said to his late adversary. "Herb," said the other, still staring at William with interest. "Come on, Herb," said William jauntily. "Let's buy some sweets, eh?" He entered a small, unsavoring sweet shop, and the whole tribe crowded in after him. He and Herb discussed the rival merits of bull's eyes and cockernut kisses at length. "Them larses longer," said Herb, "but these are tastes nicer." Finally, William airily tasted one of the cockernut kisses, and the whole tribe followed his example, to be chased by the indignant shopkeeper all the way down the street. "Eatin' of 'em!" he shouted furiously. "Eatin' of 'em without payin' for 'em! I'll set the cops on you, you young thieves!" They rushed along the next street, shouting, whistling, and pushing each other. William's whistle was louder than any. He ran the foremost. The lust of lawlessness was growing on him. They swarmed in at the next sweet shop, and William purchased 6 pennyworth of bull's eyes and poured them recklessly out of the bag into the grimy, outstretched palms that surrounded him. William had no idea where he was. His hands were as grimy as the hands of his companions, his face was streaked with dirt wherever his hands had touched it, his eye was black, his collar was gone, his hair was wild, his overcoat had lost its look of tailored freshness, and he was happy at last. He was no longer a little gentleman staying at a select hotel with his family. He was a boy among boys, an outlaw among outlaws once more. He was no longer a pariah. He had proved his valor in fighting and running and whistling. He was almost accepted, not quite. He was alight with exhilaration. In the next street a watering cart had just passed, and there was a broad, muddy stream flowing along the gutter. With a whoop of joy the tribe made for it, Herb at the head, closely followed by William. William's patent leather shoes began to lose their damning smartness. It was William who began to stamp as he walked, and the rest at once followed suit. Splashing, shouting, whistling, jostling, they followed the muddy stream through street after street. At every corner William seemed to shed yet another portion of the nice equipment of the boy who's going to a party. No party would have claimed him now, no hostess greeted him, no housemaid admitted him. He had completely burned his boats. But he was happy. All good things come to an end, however, even a muddy stream in a gutter, and Herb, still leader, called out, "Come on, you chaps! Come on, Bill! Bells!" Along both sides of a street they flew at breakneck speed, pulling every bell as they passed. 3 enraged householders pursued them. One of them, fleeter than the other 2, caught the smallest and slowest of the tribe, and began to execute corporal punishment. It was William who returned, charged from behind, left the householder winded in the gutter, and dragged the yelling scapegoat to the shelter of his tribe. "Good old Bill!" said Herb, and William's heart swelled again with pride. Nothing on earth would now have checked his victorious career. A motor van passed with another gang of street urchins hanging on merrily behind. With a yell of battle, William hurled himself upon them, struggled with them in mid-air, and established himself, cheering on his own tribe and pushing off the others. In the fight, William lost his overcoat. His Eton coat was torn from top to bottom, and his waistcoat ripped open. But his tribe won the day. The rival tribe dropped off, hurling ineffectual taunts and insults, and on sailed William and his gang, half running, half riding, with an exhilarating mixture of physical exercise and joy-riding unknown to the more law-abiding citizen. And in the midst was William. William serene and triumphant, William dirty and ragged. William acclaimed leader at last. The motor van put on speed. There was a ride of pure breathless joy and peril before, at last exhausted, they dropped off. Then Herb turned to William. "What you doing tonight, mate?" he said. "Mate?" William's heart glowed. "Nothing, mate," answered William carelessly. "Oh, I'm going to the pictures," said Herb. "If you like to help my old woman with the coffee stall, she'll give you a tanner." A coffee stall! Oh, joy! Was the magic of this evening inexhaustible? "I'll help her, all right, mate," said William, making an effort to acquire his new friend's accent and intonation. "I'll take her near up to it," said Herb, and to the gang, "Now you run all home, kids. Me and Bill is busy." He gave William a piece of chewing gum, which William proudly took and chewed and swallowed, and led him to a street corner from where a coffee stall could be seen in a glare of flaming oil jets. "You just say Herb sent me, and you bet you'll get a tanner when she shuts up, if she's not in a patty. Go on. Good night." He fled, leaving William to approach the stall alone. A large, untidy woman regarded him with arms akimbo. "I've come to help with the stall," said William, trying to speak with the purest of Cockney accent. "Herb sent me." The woman regarded him with a hostile stare, still with arms akimbo. "Oh, he did he? He's always ready to send someone else. He's gone to the pictures, I suppose. He's a nice son for a poor woman to have, isn't he? Larking about all day and going to pictures all night. And where do I come in? I ask you, where do I come in?" William, feeling that some reply was expected, said that he didn't know. She looked him up and down. Her expression implied that her conclusions were far from complimentary. "And you, I suppose, one of the young divils picked up from heaven knows where. Told yer you'd get a tanner, I suppose. Well, you'll get a tanner if you behaves my likin', and you'll get a box on the ears if you don't. And come on, don't stand there all night. Here's a apron. Buns is a penny each, and sandwiches a penny each, and cups of corfee a penny each. Get a move on." He was actually installed behind the counter. He was actually covered from neck to foot in a white apron. His rapture knew no bounds. He served strong men with sandwiches and cups of coffee. He dropped their pennies into the wooden till. He gave change, generally wrong. He turned the handle of the fascinating urn. He could not resist the handle of the little urn. When there were no customers, he turned the handle to see the little brown stream gush out in little spurts onto the floor or onto the counter. His feeling of importance as he handed over buns and received pennies was indescribable. He felt like a king, like a god. He had forgotten all about his family. Then the stout lady presented him with a bowl of hot water, a dishcloth, and a towel, told him to wash up. Wash up? He had never washed up before. He swished the water round the bowl with the dishcloth very fast one way, and then quickly changed and swished it round the other. It was fascinating. He lifted the dishcloth high out of the water and swirled a thin stream to and fro. He soaked his apron and swamped the floor. Finally his patroness, who had been indulging in a doze, awoke and fixed eyes of horror upon him. "What you think you're a doin' of?" she said indignantly. "Yer think you're at the seaside, weren't you? Yer think you've got yer little bucket a spade, aren't you? Wastin' of good water, spoilin' of a good hapron. Where did Herb find yer, I'd like to know? Picked yer up a lunatic asylum, I should say. Oh, lummy! 'Ere's Tufts comin'. Sharp now, be ready with to burn, and try and 'ave a bit of sense, and everything double price for toffs now, don't forget." But William, with a sinking heart, had recognized the toffs. Looking wildly round, he saw a large cap, presumably Herb's, on a lower shelf of the stall. He seized it, put it on, and dragged it over his eye. The toffs approached, 4 of them. One of them, the elder lady, seemed upset. "Have you seen," she said to the owner of the stall, "a little boy anywhere about? A little boy in an Eton suit?" "No, ma'am," said the proprietress. "I ain't seen no one in a Eton suit." "He was going out to a party," went on Mrs. Brown breathlessly, "and he must have got lost on the way. They rang up to say he hadn't arrived, and the police have had no news of him, and we've traced him to this locality. You haven't seen a little boy that looked as if he were going to a party?" "No, ma'am," said the lady of the coffee stall. "I ain't seen no little boy going to no party this evening." "Oh, mother!" said Ethel, and William, trying to hide his face between his cap brim and his apron, groaned in spirit as he heard her voice. "Do let's have some coffee, now we're here." "Very well, darling," said Mrs. Brown. "4 cups of coffee, please." William, still cowering under his cap, poured them out and handed them over the counter. "You couldn't mistake him," said Mrs. Brown tearfully. "He had a nice blue overcoat over his Eton suit, and a blue cap to match, and patent leather shoes, and he was so looking forward to the party, I can't think—" "How much?" said William's father to William. "2d each," muttered William. There was a horrible silence. "I beg your pardon," said William's father suavely, and William's heart sank. "2d each," he muttered again. There was another horrible silence. "May I trouble you," went on William's father, and from the deadly politeness of his tone, William realized that all was over. "May I trouble you to remove your cap a moment? Something about your voice and the lower portion of your face reminds me of a near relative of mine." But it was Robert who snatched Herb's cap from his head and stripped his apron from him and said, "You young devil!" and Ethel who said, "Goodness, just look at his clothes!" and Mrs. Brown who said, "Oh, my darling little William, and I thought I'd lost you!" and the lady of the coffee stall who said, "Well, yer can have him for all he knows about washin' up." And William returned, sad but unrepentant, to the bosom of outraged respectability. End of Chapter 7.